I once came close to meeting R&B superstar Alicia Keys, and if I had known then what I know now, I would have gone straight up to her and asked her if I could use her song Superwoman to play over the closing credits of the documentary I made about the trailblazing African American women who integrated pro wrestling in the 1950s. The documentary is called Lady Wrestler: The Amazing Untold Story of African American Women in the Ring.
So it wasn't mostly with me just the wrestling aspect. I was looking for, the strengthening of your body and, be in good shape, which was a bad thing in our times because girls didn't do that.
I directed the documentary. My name is Chris Bournet. This encounter with Alicia Keys that I just described, there's one problem with it. She hadn't yet written the song Superwoman when I almost met her. Well, maybe she had written it, but it certainly hadn't been released. When I almost met Alicia Keys, this was in the early to mid 2000s. I was covering an award show. It may have been the Essence Awards or the BET Awards or the Billboard Awards. I forget which one because I used to be an entertainment reporter for the Columbus Post, a now defunct African American newspaper in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. And I covered so many award shows back when I was an entertainment reporter that they sort of all blur together. I used to fly out to LA and New York with a good friend of mine, the late Willie Jennings, a really, really talented African American photographer who passed away several years ago. May he rest in peace. Now, Willie was one of the top photographers in the field, and he would often get credentials to cover award shows, and he would put me down as the writer. So all I had to do was get an airplane ticket and share a hotel room with him. And we had lots of fun covering these star-studded events. So one time after one of these award shows, I was walking out of the auditorium and Alicia Keys just happened to be walking right by me. But where I ran into Alicia Keys was not on the red carpet or in the press room. It was after the award show was over and people were leaving, and Willie and I were walking out of the auditorium, and Alicia Keys just happened to be walking by. And this was before she was a really big star. This was kind of early on in her career. And I remember how beautiful she was, just being so strikingly beautiful in person. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, period. But I mean, she's even more beautiful in person than she appears in music videos and television shows. But anyway, I remember Alicia Keys pausing to take a photo with a fan who came up to her and being very gracious. And I think the fan had just asked for her autograph, matter of fact, and Alicia Keys actually offered to take a photo with the fan. So it's no surprise that she went on to have a very illustrious career. I was a fan of Alicia Keys even back then, but I didn't have the nerve to go up to her. Even if I had worked up the nerve to approach Alicia Keys, it would not have solved the problem of acquiring the rights to her song Superwoman to use in my documentary Lady Wrestler, because as I mentioned before, she either hadn't written the song or it hadn't been released yet. Well, it certainly hadn't been released yet because Superwoman appeared on her 2007 album As I Am, and this was in, I want to say it had to be like 2002, 2003. So this was at least 4 years before the song was released. But oh, how I wish I had been able to get the rights to use Superwoman to play over the closing credits of Lady Wrestler. And in fact, I did use the song in a rough cut version of the documentary in a screening that I had just for the Lady Wrestlers, just for the women I interviewed and their families at the historic Lincoln Theater on the Near East Side, the King Lincoln district of Columbus, a historically Black area of my hometown of Columbus, Ohio, back in 2012. And that song just sums up these courageous women. And I think the chorus says it all. I'll read from the chorus. Because I am a superwoman. Yes, I am. Yes, she is. Even when I'm a mess, I still put on a vest with an S on my chest. Oh, yes, I'm a superwoman. And those lyrics just personify courageous women like Ethel Johnson, whom I got to interview, and her sisters, Babs Wingo and Marva Scott and Ramona Isbell, another wrestling legend whom I also got to interview. Even though the song Superwoman is perfect for Lady Wrestler, I knew that acquiring the song rights would be really expensive, not because Alicia Keys, charges more than any other songwriter. It's just that using song rights in a movie where the movie maybe appeared several different places. It may appear on a site like Amazon, which Lady Wrestler is available on Amazon. And it also, documentaries or feature films can also appear on places like HBO and, public television like PBS. So acquiring the rights to use a song in all those different platforms is just really expensive. And when I was finishing up Lady Wrestler and finally finishing up the final version in 2017 and 2018, I had a limited amount of time and a limited budget, and I just knew there wasn't time to approach Alicia Keys because when am I going to find myself in person with her again? Because by that time I was not doing entertainment reporting as frequently as I used to. I still freelance every now and then, but I don't go out to LA and New York all the time like I used to when Willie was still alive. And sometimes trying to even research who owns the rights to a song, because sometimes the artist doesn't own the publishing rights to the song. Sometimes it's the record label, sometimes it's an independent publisher or company that owns the rights. So I just knew there wasn't time and there wasn't money. And in a fantasy world, I would have went up to Alicia Keys, we would have became friends, and I would have been able to just call her up and say, hey, Alicia, can I use the rights to Superwoman in this movie I'm making? And she would have said, oh, yes, that's an amazing story. Feel free to use the rights. You just tell me the number you can afford and I'll give it to you. But of course, we don't live in an ideal world. And even though sometimes I live in a fantasy world, that did not happen. However, I did use Superwoman. I did include it on the soundtrack I made for Lady Wrestler. And when I say soundtrack, I mean a playlist that I made just for myself to listen to while I was editing and working on Lady Wrestler to keep me motivated. And of course, Superwoman was very much one of the songs at the top of that playlist that I listened to over and over. So I have to say, Alicia Keys, thank you for the inspiration. Thank you for writing an amazing ballad, an amazing anthem of female empowerment. It just shows how talented you are. And it really, really captures the spirit of these amazing boundary breaking women in Lady Wrestler. Thank you for watching.